This is Facets of Connection, a podcast exploring how we build relationships that actually work in an evolving world. I'm your host, Sarah Melissa Oswald, a relationship coach and founder of Lead Your Love Life. Each episode explores the many dimensions of human connection, from romantic partnerships and family systems to leadership, community, and the inner relationship we have with ourselves. Through thoughtful conversations with fascinating guests and occasional deep dives into the skills that help relationships thrive, we'll explore what it takes to build connections that are rooted in dignity, respect, repair, and resilience. Because the quality of our relationships shapes the quality of our lives and the future that we're building together. Today, I am joined by a dear friend of mine, Karta Elise Allred. She's a multidisciplinary artist, a storyteller, and a facilitator whose work explores the intelligence of the human body and the power of collective creativity. Karta Elise is fascinated by the ways our personal, communal, and ecological stories live through us, and how movement, creativity, and ritual can help us reconnect with ourselves, with each other, and with the living world. Our conversation explores embodiment, collective intelligence, and what becomes possible when we learn to listen more deeply. Welcome. Thanks for being a guest on Facets of Connection.
My pleasure.
I'm so glad to have you here. I've been wanting to get you on this podcast for a while. And our friendship goes back a ways now. I was wondering if you want to just speak to that so that we can let our listeners in the relationship that we have. Because I think that plays into this conversation we're about to have.
No doubt. No doubt. Okay, so I think we're going back 17, 18 years.
Isn't that? Yeah.
Is that right? Back to 2009. Sarah and I met in grad school at Naropa here in Boulder, Colorado, in a very unusual, unique, alternative master's program that was titled Environmental Leadership. And it really wove a lot of relational skills, group dynamics, and how do we solve the problems that we face as humanity in this day and age. Back in the day, you could use the word sustainability, social justice. We were really looking closely at that and learning from the new science of systems thinking, as well as indigenous ways of knowing, which the new science basically is just kind of describing, in some more scientific terms. And ultimately, how can we really foster healthy relationships that can handle and navigate conflict in order to make better decisions and do good work for this world?
Yes. That is where I really dug my heels in.
You did. Yeah.
And I want to say, too, how special it was because we were in a cohort of 14 people. And for 2 years straight, we had every class together. And most of the time, it was just the 14 of us.
Yes.
So we got to practice being in these kinds of relationships and leadership roles and navigating conflict together as a group, and got to practice some of the things that you and I both teach now.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
So we have a special friendship.
We do. Yeah. And I mean, I'm realizing I didn't really speak as much to the friendship as I did to the content, the container that we were in. And that context of study was so rich in and of itself and so relationally focused that naturally, there were deep connections made throughout the cohort. But you and I had a special spark. We were kindred spirits, I guess you could say. Like, we get each other. We both grew up on the East Coast. We both grew up on the performing arts. And we both were really blown away and inspired by the relational aspect of what we were learning. I know it was deeply healing for me, learning about the power of belonging, and that it's something that we actually all want and desire and deserve.
Mm.
Um, so, yeah.
Yeah, that group was deeply healing for me as well.
Mm.
In fact, it's one of the groups that I reflect back on in my life that reminds me of how important the feeling of belonging to a collective is and how we actually learn about who we are through the eyes of others who know us. And so our cohort was that healing experience for me. And I've looked to recreate that in every place I go.
Mm. Indeed. Indeed. It was a leadership program, but rooted in servant leadership. Like, how can all of
True.
us be of service from the geometry of a circle versus a hierarchical pyramid? And how do we create the conditions for each of us to show up in our own unique gifts and genius, whether we're really quiet and introverted, but highly observant, or we're the first one to raise our hands and talk? I'm one of those people who learn the value of maybe taking a step back and listening to the full circle, listening to that face. So it was a leadership program that was not about hierarchy, that was not about the sort of more traditional um, hustle culture, like win at all expense, optimization style of leadership. It was very much in service, yeah, to the whole.
I'm
How we can,
so glad to hear you name that because I often forget. Because leadership to me just means that.
yeah.
And I forget that it's not the standard in our culture, that
Totally.
leadership is much more seen as a dominant top down stance.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that we are seeing in these times in such an exaggerated, horrifying way, which brings us to the kind of the current context for this conversation. None of us are these like hyper individuals who are compartmentalized from the rest of the world. And we do live in a culture that kind of wants us to believe that we are. Hyper individualism, I feel like, is also kind of a symptom of that dominant leadership model as well. But actually, and we learn this from indigenous ways of knowing across continents and across hundreds of thousands of years, as well as the new science, we're permeable membranes. That's one way I like to kind of frame it. Like, I am not just this hyper isolated individual, but that actually my feelings, my thinking, my experience is very much in relationship to everything that's around me and even receiving things flowing through. And I'm realizing that might sound a little woo or a little abstract, but that is really kind of at the heart of most collective cultures for 99% of our human history. There wasn't this concept of like this isolated individual, but that we were a part of a tribe. Yes, of course, obviously, but also a part so connected to the weather, so connected to the nature around us, to the food that we were growing or hunting and gathering to eat. There is this there is this reciprocity. And one of our teachers, let's see if I can bring it back around. One of our teachers in grad school would say, relationship is all there is. There's always this relationality happening. And so that can sound interesting conceptually. It's one thing if it stays up in the head as intellectual, but you and I both are somatic practitioners. How do we live this in our actual bodies?
This moves naturally into the field of study that you've embarked. What's the program that you're studying?
I am actually in two paths of study concurrently. One is the mythic body with Josh Schrei, who has an epic podcast called The Emerald. That when I first encountered a few years ago, it met a spiritual knowing in me that I had only ever had glimmers of when we were in grad school. And it's very much rooted in remembering our animist roots as human beings. 99.9% of our human history across continents, we have lived mandala of relationship, as I'm kind of calling it, in our everyday lives, right? And so I am now in a course of study, his year-long course of study that's very intensive. It's called The Mythic Body. And it's really unpacking the role of ritual. And across eons of time, we see evidence of ritual. And so we're diving deep into what that is and how it can weave us into that deeper relationality and remembrance that that the living intelligence of the universe is in everything, in every moment.
As you're speaking, I'm hearing the word devotion and ritual. And in the program that I'm building for couples, the final stage of it is about building ritual and devotion in our relationships. So I'm talking about romantic relationships, but
Yes.
if we can do that in our homes and with our family, we impact the greater family around us, our friends and community, our community as a whole, and it ripples out. But you're talking about it from a bigger perspective, looking inward, and I'm looking at it from here going outward. What do you think? Am I tracking that right? Or
Potentially, I think I'm speaking of it in really broad terms,
yeah.
but this course is very much about how do I bring that animate relationality and reciprocity into my daily life and my daily practice.
Okay.
So it really is very much grounded back into the personal, but not in a way that reinforces hyper individualism. That's the beauty of this, is that it starts to help us remember that it's not just me isolated all by myself, which is what kind of Western civilization tells us right now. And we have an epidemic of loneliness and isolation and mental illness, right? Like, so that's real. And I think it's like a pendulum that's swung a little too far. So
We
yes.
have an epidemic of loneliness and isolation.
Yeah.
This is something I say a lot because it's my guiding force. But I now I'm listening for how does the work that you're learning and bringing in here, how does that help the average person at home who's listening who's like, I am lonely and isolated? How does remembering this help them feel more connected?
Mm, it's a
How is
good
it
point.
tangible?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'm not going to pretend to be an expert that like I've got the absolute answer. I can speak from my own personal experience and those of the collectives that I am a part of that are all actively engaged in this. So I'm not like by myself doing this stuff.
So
Um,
you're practicing it in community, first and foremost.
yeah, practicing it in community. And that's where my second course of study comes in, which I didn't get through yet. But um, I am currently apprenticing with an embodied free-form movement modality, which is a very, very open container for dance as being therapeutic and cathartic, and very much something we do in community. So it's a dance community. I am apprenticing with the 360 emergent, which evokes the power of the circle. So that's an important piece. And we dance very much in circular spaces. Moving what needs to move first and foremost, like getting the personal gunk out of the way, which is, I think, one of the keys to how we navigate for people listening at home, right? Move your body.
Yeah.
Move your body. And so, like, moving together and working on our personal shit together at a certain point, because we're in a shared group field, there is resonance that is raised in that space. It's not unlike going to a gospel church and feeling the resonance that is raised from that song practice, that devotional song practice. Like, I feel that spirit when I hear gospel music, right? It's similar. And this is why the arts are all really powerful tools for us to move what needs to move, but also raise that resonance together, which create coherence in the field. And then what can we do? This is where I get really excited. And my inquiry is really leaning into there's a coherence that arises when people get together and do ritual and move together. And how can we then use that coherence to have a council process, talk to each other, work through our difficulties, make decisions that impact our community. I feel like this is the future of governance. And it might be hundreds of years away because we don't see anything like that. But that's how it was for 99.9% of our human history in small tribal circles.
Hmm.
Let's take a breath.
Mm. The movement of the body feels like something I want to touch into a little bit more. I know that as I've been holding the pain of the world right now, right? As I check in on the news and what's happening globally and in our country, and sometimes right here in front of our faces, I am overcome with grief. And it puts me in a position to choose whether I'm going to tune out and shut down and numb out, or if I'm going to lean in and allow my body to feel grief and move toward it rather than away from it, which is the natural impulse, I would think, for most people. Man, it takes a lot of guts to lean in and feel the grief. And so I've been moving my body through that, mostly here alone at home.
Yeah. Which
Right
is
here
also
in this
great.
room, I've got my yoga mat over here and I'm dancing and moving, allowing the grief to show up fully, let it move through me. Sometimes I'm standing here and screaming. I know that
Yeah.
sounds a little crazy to say that publicly, but that's been real for me. That's been how I've been, um, that is how I've chosen to keep myself turned on and not shut down from what's happening in the world. And I'm aware that just me doing that doesn't actually change anything out there.
Or does it?
I don't know. You could argue that maybe it does. I don't think, I have judgment around it. Like, that's not enough.
Mm, mm,
That's not enough to say that's my action. No.
right. Yeah.
But it motivates me to get into action, to be in community and
Yeah.
speak up
Yeah.
and hold the people around me.
And in that way, it does make a difference.
Yeah.
It does.
I'm hot and a little bit sweaty as I'm telling you this. Yeah.
Mm. I want to acknowledge the potency I am registering in my system as you share this. And I noticed I had to change my stance. I actually needed to, in order to just be with you in this, I had to widen my stance and drop my anchors again to just be with you and not as a just. Like, I want to be with you in this. And that part of the work is how can we be with each other and make it give each other permission to express what's difficult and share how we're struggling. I'm with you. I can only take so much of the news, and I'm very disciplined with how often I tune in, and I'm still tuning in, but I just really am with you in terms of, like, I know that my nervous system kind of needs to be prepared. And if it's not, it might hit me too hard and I might not have the capacity to handle the grief that wants to come up. And this is something that my teacher, Josh Schry, has also said, and he's hit on this on a few of his recent podcasts. Our nervous systems were not designed to take in horrendous news from around the world 24/7 through a glowing screen.
Of course.
Not even remotely. Yeah. And so we are in this like heightened moment where I think a lot of people, don't know that they can like turn it off or step back. And these screens are designed to keep us hooked too. So it's a tricky moment right now. Um, and I don't think neither one of us are advocating for not paying attention, but I think maybe where we are leaning with this is like, how do we care for ourselves so that we can continue to show up and be in good action and be there for other people in these times?
That's it.
Yeah. Because it's hard. It's hard to see it all and not have an hour to just weep and cry and scream. Um,
Yes.
and I want to also just really acknowledge I totally support screaming in a safe, healthy container where your friends or your family know that you're what you're doing. And that's one of the things that I see a lot on our dance floors. It's a safe, well held, facilitated space for catharsis,
Mm.
for you to like do whatever you need to do, whatever ugliness needs to be expressed, whatever anger, frustration, sadness, grief, we see that constantly. It's a safe communal space to do that. And as we know from rites of passage work and just belonging relational work, being witnessed by others, especially when things are hard, is profoundly healing.
Yes. And to experience the healing and the pain collectively is
Yeah.
profoundly nourishing. Yeah.
Yes. And that's something that we've lost because we've lost tribe, we've lost village, we've lost, you know, a real sense of communal togetherness that we have to go out of our way to find it. We have to go out of our way to create it. And those circles exist in all the arts, in the sports. Like you can find your people and you can move what you need to move.
That's true. The circles exist, but it's not always obvious where to find them. And I told you, I'm always moving through my life trying to recreate that community that we had of the cohort. Yeah. Everywhere I go, I'm like trying to gather people in some way. And I'm just going to bring this in because I'm curious if you have any thoughts about it. So I have recently put a note out to the parents in my son's kindergarten class saying, we are going through a lot as parents. We are not meant to handle this alone. There is stuff happening in the world that is scary and big, and our kids will be impacted by it. I want to be in deeper connection with you all. Who wants to join? And I had a gathering of some parents, my house.
Great.
And I have to be honest with you, it was just our first gathering. So I didn't want to knock them over the heads with what I want, what my secret motive is to get them together. And I want a communal space where I can process grief with people in my sphere.
Yeah.
And even though I have skills in leading and facilitating this stuff, I was nervous about bringing that in around my kitchen table because I thought it might scare someone off. I don't know. Except I don't know exactly what stopped me. I didn't have it queued up. I wasn't like scripted and ready to roll with it. But I did invite them into sharing like what they're holding and what they're longing for. But I didn't yet bring in, hey, what if we even went deeper together? What could that look like? How do I create an invitation for harder conversations to be present when our culture is so focused on, oh, I'm good. I'm good. Things are great. There's so much of that.
Yeah.
It's easy to stay surface level. It's easy to just stay playful and light. How, as you hear this, I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about like how me, Sarah Oswald, or anyone listening could invite deeper conversations, deeper connection with others in their world.
It's really powerful. It's a powerful question. I'm really proud of you for putting the invitation out there. And I also hear how scary it can be to want to open up subject matter that we as a culture at large tend to shy away from, tend to numb out from, tend to avoid. And everything around us reinforces the ability to do that. So like you are up against the world, literally. I mean the field sort of dominant thinking in this time. And again, like I don't know the answers.
You
but
don't have to be
I
an
can,
expert here. I'm asking
yeah,
for your
yeah,
personal
yeah,
opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, and it feels like an important gesture on my part. It's like a reminder to me because I can come off as like I really believe some things, and so it can come off that way. So I also want to make sure, yes, I can be very convincing, but I'm just me. So that said, what I have seen work and what certainly speaks to me is just to be honest. And you already kind of did that in your invitation. Like, hey, these times are hard, right? Acknowledging how you are perceiving and experiencing things from a place of honesty and just saying, this might this might be something we don't do very often, but like grief is real. Grief is here for me. And I believe that there are healthy ways that we can be with each other in it. And there's actually modeled out there for this too. As you and I both know, um, the other thing that comes through for me on this too is that like not everybody's ready. Not everybody's ready. Not everybody
That's
wants
it.
to do it. And so no, like it's not like us having this conversation is gonna change the whole world, right? Like obviously.
But
But
it's healing for us.
it's healing for us. It's healing for the people that are magnetized to this conversation. Hopefully it's empowering and inspiring to them to know they're not alone. Um, but yeah, I think it comes back to just being really honest, and that's vulnerable, which we know is like the most courageous thing we can do is be vulnerable. Um,
I had the courage to put it in writing, and they showed up, right? They said yes. I invited them, they showed up,
yeah.
and then I froze. I wanted them to enjoy themselves. I didn't wanna bring in hard stuff. It was these are some new friendships for me, so I was maybe a little hesitant to make it too deep too quick. And perhaps there's some wisdom in that, this will
Totally.
unfold over time.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, if from one frame of reference, everything that happens is perfect. Everything that happens is the divine unfolding. And the horrendous things we see in the world, it's horrifying. And this is a system in collapse. This is dominant, hegemonic, you could say white colonial power out of control. And we're seeing the impacts of that. And it's all the divine unfolding. And it sucks.
How do you wrap your head around that? How do you say this is the divine unfolding in front of us
Yeah. Yeah.
when it's so dark? Isn't the divine supposed to be light?
Nope.
And yeah, say more.
Nope. No. Nature is the great provider and giver and the great devourer. Nature is death too, and darkness. Nature has fangs and will eat you alive, right? The political scene right now is also God, like experimenting with experiencing itself in this earth plane. And I know that's incredibly unpopular, probably thing to say. And no doubt I would probably get a lot of flack for that. And it wouldn't exist if it wasn't all an expression of the divine.
Well, it's all part of
The whole. It's
the
all
whole.
part of the whole.
Yeah. We're
Yeah.
not separate from it.
Yeah. And I would say at the root of this pain and this ugliness and the war and the attacks on so many people and certainly on nature, which has been happening for a long time, all deeply rooted. I want to articulate this well and carefully, but it's rooted in the loss of honoring the sacred in all of our relations. It's rooted in we've lost a culture that we had for the majority of our human wanderings on this planet, where we had just as much respect for the trees and the birds and the mountains and the oceans and the waters because we knew that they fed us. And we knew that if we didn't feed them back, where would we be? And so somewhere along the line, and I'm not claiming to like know exactly when it happened or what. That's a whole much deeper, longer conversation that there are other great experts in. Um, but somewhere along the line, like we really stopped that knowing of reciprocity. And there was this my meditation teacher talks about it this way, that there can be the mistaken intellect. Like if we're all in our heads and not also in our bodies, and we can think all kinds of crazy things, and the intellect is not always right. And so there's the mistaken intellect somewhere along the line decided that like I'm better than the rest of this. I'm better than the earth. I'm better than those people. And certainly with tribalism, tribes fought with each other, like that happened, sure. Yes. But it is at such a grand scope now, that it's exaggerated. It's a system in runaway. It's cancer. Yeah.
I had a call with my Nick's uncle Paul yesterday. We were talking about kind of this very topic of, is this cancer, as you call it, that we're experiencing, the rugged individualism that our culture praises, is that part of our makeup, or is it something gone awry? Yeah. Is it part of our DNA as a species that is bound to happen? Because if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the more of those base needs that are met, the more possibility someone has for self-actualization and consciousness and kindness. Yeah, kindness.
I mean that.
And that doesn't seem to be what plays out currently. When people get power, power over dominance, we're not seeing that they are, oh, they're better off. They're going to help us all. It's not really what we're seeing, is it?
Yeah.
So is it part of our makeup, or is it a cancer?
That's a good question. Yeah. Something that I will never forget. This was our very first class and our very first day in grad school, Mark Wilding. And he wrote on the board, all models are wrong, but some are useful.
Some are useful. I say it a lot.
I love that, right?
How does that apply here?
So Maslow's hierarchy is great. Cool. Yeah. But it's not that simple.
No.
It's not that linear. And yeah. I mean, I hear you asking, and I love this conversation with Nick's uncle, that was it natural for us to kind of move into this domination, to move into this? I mean, I think one of the things that makes me so sick is to me, the system as we know it right now has been designed and is really getting reinforced to keep the rich as possible and helping them just get exponentially richer. And this has been going on for decades.
Yes. And we're at a precipice.
We're at a precipice where it's obvious, it's so in our face, and the wool is being pulled over the eyes so obviously.
I don't know if I'll include too much of the political stuff.
Great.
It's mainly because I want to keep this accessible to everyone.
Right on. Right the fuck on, Sarah.
Is that a good thing, or is that a hiding thing? I'm not sure.
So, I mean, I think this is part of the larger conversation that we're having here. Is like, at what point do I put a stake in the ground and stand in the dignity of what I believe and what I see, And also, do I have to put a political stake in the ground, or can I actually be of service to a broader audience by not necessarily speaking directly to, you know, the political piece, but can I speak to the nervous system piece? Can I speak to the
Yes.
relational piece? Can I speak to that? So,
'Cause none of us are separate from that experience of it.
yeah.
So, yeah, that is my take on it. I'm not a political podcast, um,
No.
but a human one, and I I know I'm putting a stake in the ground saying, "I care about humanity. I care about injustice. I care
Mhm.
about people suffering, no matter who those people are." And that's
Mhm.
a political statement these days,
Yeah.
strangely enough.
A lot of what has been coming through for me in this, and also some of the different thinkers and teachers that I follow and respect. Yes, we are in such a fucked up time, and there is so much suffering, and it's hard to witness. And it's perfectly right on time for the collapse that wants to happen. Um, and our response is not to take up arms. It's not to any kind of violent resistance whatsoever. I have zero interest in that. And I'm not paying attention to anybody that's talking about it. And honestly, I don't hear anybody talking about that. I also don't want to go to battle with my friends and my community. What I want is to show up resourced so I can be of service to
That's it.
people who are freaking out and having a hard time, or just the community organizing, where can I get involved in my community? I got to join the board of directors of the co-housing community that I live in
Hmm,
as the renter representative. And it's like,
cool.
that's my teensy little baby way of joining a circle and starting to learn about governance, starting to learn about community governance and
Cool.
potentially contribute. I'm listening and learning first and foremost, right? And so, yeah, I feel like the revolution that wants to happen right now is one of kindness and love and heart. It's one of showing up in relationship. It's one of staying in our bodies rather than ejecting out of our bodies and continuing to just play the status quo game.
I think that sums it up.
Brings
Is
us.
what we're doing here.
Yeah. Relationship is all there is. If we can start to bring that into our body and bring that into every single thing that we interact with in our daily life, just that can be such a beautiful shift.
Where can people find you if they want to learn more and stay in touch with you?
Honestly, I'm kind of hiding out right now. Like, I don't have a website. I'm not active in the socials. However, that will change as I step into offering my mythosomatic ministry. I'm going to start offering dance labs and immersions later in 2026 through the 360 emergence, as well as kind of bringing my own medicine kits to dance and embodiment work, weaving it with how we deepen our relationality with that animating intelligence in all things. So, I'm the only Karta Elise out there. There is no other. And it's Karta with a K, Artaelise. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. Um, please feel free to reach out if you feel inspired. And as I start to make some offerings, I will have like an email list and I will have another website um, up and running.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Thank
You're
you.
hiding out. Oh, Karta Elise.
Hmm.
I'm
Sadly, not.
so glad that
Oh,
we got to be here and have this conversation. I think it will be impactful. Thank you for taking the time to share your wisdom with us.
oh,
Me.
Sarah Lila, as I love to call you. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here and being you. Thank you for sharing your voice through this channel. And thank you for the bright light, that you bring into this world. And honoring the dark too, because that's a part of it, right?
You have to do both,
Got to, of
even though I'm mostly inclined toward the light.
course.
Yes, of course, because I'm a sun. Didn't you know?
Yeah. You shine bright.
I love you so much.
I love you too. Thank you.
I'm really grateful for your friendship.
Right back at you.
Thank you for spending this time with me on Facets of Connection. This podcast is part of my broader work through Lead Your Love Life and the Radiant Connection Lab, where I guide couples who feel distant, stuck in old patterns, or disconnected from their spark to rebuild closeness, communicate with care, and to fall in love all over again. If you'd like to explore that work further, you can learn more at leadyourlovelife.com. I'd also love to hear what this episode sparked for you. You can send me an email or a voice memo to sarah@facetsofconnection.com. I read every single message, and sometimes a listener story might become part of a future episode. If you enjoyed today's episode of Facets of Connection, be sure to follow or share this show so that more people can find it, right here or on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until next time, remember this: the quality of your life is shaped by the quality of your relationships. See you soon.